Okay, so step one, we're gonna center our clay. You wanna make sure that you get really good at this step because everything starts with centering. Whether you're making a bowl, a mug, a vase, you always have to start by centering your clay. It can be a little tough at first, but the more you practice, the better you're gonna get at it. And I'm hopefully gonna show you some techniques that will make your life a little bit easier as you're starting out. So the first thing you want is to get your ball of clay in the center of your wheel. Whack it down, push it down, whatever feels comfortable. We're gonna get our clay wet. We're gonna get our hands wet. And the first step that I always like to do, I call it a securing push. So we're gonna secure this clay down onto the bat. And what I like to do is overlap my left fingers over my right fingers. The reason for this is because the clay feeds in this direction. If you're right-handed, if you're a lefty, do everything I say but the opposite of it. But I'm a righty, so we're gonna stick with this for now. So left fingers over right, the clay feeds into my palm. If I put my left fingers down first, the clay is feeding into my fingertips. And if I curl my fingers, I might catch in my clay. So putting your right hand down first makes things a lot safer. It'll just feel better. So left fingers over right. And the goal is to kind of push these walls down and fan them down until they connect with the bat, kind of creating a cone-like shape. The thing I see most often with my beginners is they overlap palm over palm and they start pushing down directly on the top of this clay. And that kind of just achieves pancaking it out and making a flat disc. But we don't really want to reduce the height. We just want to bring these walls down and make a cone-like shape. So what we're going to do is have our fingers overlapped and our palms are kind of on the side of this clay. And when you push down, you're not pushing down directly on the top of your clay, you're pushing down the sides and fanning them down so that they start to connect with your bat. The last thing I like to do is I take a finger right here and I run it around the edge to really create that tight seam connecting our clay to our bat. Now as we cone up and down and we pull our walls, we're going to feel fairly confident that our clay is actually secure. The other nice thing is that it puts this clay in a cone-like position, so it's easier to begin your coning up. So that's next step, coning up. Same thing, overlap your left fingers over your right fingers, but this time we're going to be using the heels of our hands, a little bit of wrist action, to squeeze the clay in towards center. So we're no longer up over top of it, we are on either side of the clay, and we're squeezing in towards center. You're going to use this thumb muscle and you're going to use your palm to really squeeze in. At the base here, you're going to use this lower part of your hand to kind of scoop the clay up. Don't scoop too hard or you're going to end up chopping the head off of your clay, but a nice scooping at the base. It looks like this. So squeezing and a bit of a scoop at the base. You can see as I scoop, it leaves this nice wide flare of clay. You want to make sure that you leave a wide flare because you don't want to cut into that too much. It will result in this looking fairly straight, and when you go to cone it down, it might detach from your bat. So you want to leave a nice wide base to really keep your clay secure. And at this point, I'm not really scooping anymore. We've accomplished what we needed with that scoop at the base. Now it's all about squeezing in towards center. As you squeeze, the clay has nowhere to go but up, so try not to cover the top with your thumbs. I keep my thumbs kind of up and out of the way. And as I squeeze, I slowly raise my hands up the clay. And you'll notice that down here at the base, my thumbs are nice and wide, far apart. But as I cone up, they come together near the top and they kind of pinch to create a narrow tip. So you don't end up with a big bulky piece of clay at the top of your cone. Once you've coned up, the next step is to cone back down again. There are a lot of ways people do this, different techniques. Some people kind of mash down on the top. I like to teach you a technique that, although it's a little bit harder, if you get good at it, you're going to be able to center large pieces of clay without relying on your back or your shoulder strength. You're going to let the clay do the work for you. So this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have your left hand down low and your right hand up high. You want to curl your thumb over the top of your cone. Make sure your thumb connects with the front finger in front of it. So you don't want a nice gap there where your thumb's sticking up. You can see some clay. Connect with your finger. That leaves a gap in between your fingertips and your thumb muscle here. That is where your left hand thumb is going to slip in. So you're going to fill that gap in, and now you're completely surrounding your clay. And what you're going to do is you're going to tilt it away from you on an angle. And once you get it on that angle, you're going to feel it. It just kind of magically starts to lower itself. My right hand is assisting with the lowering. My left hand is just staying firm like a wall. And once I get low enough, I like to use my thumb muscle of my right hand to kind of softly round out the dome on the top of my clay. And then I use this finger around the base to cinch everything else in, keeping that little flare at the bottom nice and tight. If you don't cinch, it tends to kind of drift further and further out, and then you end up with a lot of clay on your bat, and then you don't get access to that clay. So cinching it in after every cone down is a nice way to keep the clay together. So we're going to cone up again. Another important thing is locking your elbows in your legs. If you have floating elbows, you have nothing to brace against, and you might just keep spinning with your clay. So lock those elbows in your legs and brace yourself. So, a scooping at the base, scooping in with this lower part of our hands, and a squeeze at the top. And as I squeeze, I'm slowly raising my hands up the clay, kind of pinching the top to make it narrow as I get up there. So a squeeze and a little pinch. And now you have a nice tall cone. And we're going to cone down again. I'm going to do it this time with one hand so I can show you the angle to bend it on and how easily it kind of lowers itself into center. So, one hand, tilt on an angle. You can see the clay lowering itself. And not only does it lower itself quite nicely, but it lowers into center. If I were to just mash down on the top of that, I'm sure you can imagine what would happen. The cone would just bend and start spinning around. So that tilt is really the best technique for lowering your clay nice and even. Takes that muscle strength out of the equation. So cone up, offset your hands, tilt, left hand staying firm, right hand doing the lowering. And then when I get to this point, I like to use my thumb muscle, softly rounding out the dome, and then a finger around the base to cinch everything in. I always cone up and down at least twice. Not only am I centering my clay through this coning up and down, but I might be working out any imperfections that are trapped inside. So you might cone up and feel little pockets, maybe air bubbles trapped inside your clay. So coning up and down is working those air bubbles out of your clay and making sure that it's really nice and consistent once you go to start opening and pulling your walls. The best way to tell if you're centered is to put your hands on your clay and look at your hands. You want to see that they're really nice and still. They're not moving, they're not spinning, there's no lumpy bits bumping your fingers around. Just really nice still hands, almost like you're holding nothing at all. And that's how you center your clay.